When billionaire tech mogul Marcus Sterling's $15 million superyacht broke down in the middle of San Francisco Bay with a board meeting worth $500 million hanging in the balance, the last person he expected to save his empire was a 12-year-old girl in torn sneakers who'd been watching from the marina. But what happened next would expose a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of corporate America, because those weren't just any dog tags hanging around her neck. They belonged to the Navy engineer who designed the yacht's revolutionary propulsion system before dying under mysterious circumstances 3 years earlier. The morning fog rolled across San Francisco Bay like a gray curtain, obscuring the gleaming towers of the financial district as Marcus Sterling stood on the deck of his pride and joy. The Meridian's Edge, a 180-foot super yacht that represented the pinnacle of maritime engineering. $2 billion, but today's emergency board meeting could destroy everything he'd worked for. The yacht's revolutionary electric propulsion system, developed by Sterling Dynamics' Marine Division, was supposed to be the crown jewel of their IPO announcement. Instead, it had failed catastrophically 2 miles from shore, leaving the $15 million vessel dead in the water with 12 board members, 3 federal regulators, and the future of clean maritime technology hanging in the balance. Captain Rodriguez emerged from the engine room, his weathered face grim with professional defeat. "Mr. Sterling, I've checked everything twice." Marcus felt his stomach drop. The IPO announcement was scheduled for 2 p.m., with investors flying in from around the world based on promises of revolutionary maritime technology that was currently as useful as an anchor. "Sir, this isn't a repair situation. We're looking at complete system replacement." 2 weeks. Marcus closed his eyes, calculating the catastrophic implications. Sterling Dynamics stock would crater when word leaked about the failure. Competitors would pounce. The IPO would collapse. 3,000 employees would lose their jobs. And the clean energy revolution he'd spent a decade building would die with his company. His phone buzzed insistently. Another call from Janet Morrison, his head of investor relations, undoubtedly with more bad news about nervous shareholders and media inquiries. Marcus ignored it, staring instead at the San Francisco skyline that suddenly seemed impossibly distant. From the marina, 12-year-old Sophia Chen had been watching the massive yacht through her father's binoculars for over an hour. The vessel had been circling the same area, its engines making sounds that didn't match the smooth electric hum she'd heard during its previous visits to the bay. Her trained ear, sharpened by years of helping her grandfather restore classic boats, detected the telltale signs of electrical system failure. Sophia adjusted the dog tags hanging around her neck, her father's Navy insignia from his time as a marine systems engineer before his death in what officials had called an industrial accident at Sterling Dynamics 3 years earlier. She'd been too young then to understand the whispered conversations between her mother and the lawyers, the sealed settlement agreements, or why mentioning her father's work always made adults uncomfortable. But she understood boats. Her grandfather had been teaching her marine engineering since she could hold a wrench, and what had started as weekend projects had evolved into an intuitive understanding of maritime systems that impressed even veteran mechanics. She could diagnose engine problems by sound alone and had already helped repair dozens of boats in the marina. The Coast Guard cutter approached the disabled yacht just as Sophia made a decision that would change everything. She climbed into her grandfather's small maintenance boat and started the outboard motor, her young hands steady on the controls, despite the magnitude of what she was about to attempt. 20 minutes later, Marcus Sterling found himself staring down at a small girl who had somehow convinced his security team to let her aboard. She stood barely 5 feet tall, her sneakers held together with duct tape and her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail that reminded him painfully of his own daughter at that age. Mr. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward protectively. "Sweetheart, this is very sophisticated equipment." Sophia didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, listening to something only she could hear. "Your main propulsion controller failed because of a cascade overload in the battery management system." The deck fell silent except for the gentle lapping of waves against the hull. Marcus studied this remarkable child, noting the way she carried herself with quiet competence and the reverent way her hand moved to the dog tags at her throat. "That's actually a plausible explanation," Captain Rodriguez admitted grudgingly. "You don't need replacement part," Sophia replied simply. "You need to isolate the damaged components and reroute power through the secondary distribution network." Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. Sophia's hand moved unconsciously to her dog tags. S. Navy. The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. David Chen had been Sterling Dynamics' most brilliant marine engineer, the visionary who'd created the revolutionary propulsion system that was supposed to transform the maritime industry. His death in what had been ruled an accidental explosion had devastated the entire engineering team and nearly derailed the yacht project entirely. But there had always been questions. David had been raising concerns about safety protocols in the weeks before his death, pushing for additional testing that would have delayed the project. Some had whispered about corporate pressure, about corners being cut to meet impossible deadlines. The official investigation had been swift and conclusive. Accidental explosion due to equipment malfunction. Case closed. Now David's daughter stood on the deck of his greatest creation, claiming she could repair what a team of experts couldn't even diagnose properly. "Show me," Marcus said quietly. For the next 2 hours, Sophia guided Captain Rodriguez and his engineering team through the yacht's electrical systems with the confidence of someone who'd studied the blueprints since childhood. Her small hands could reach connections that adult technicians couldn't access, and her understanding of her father's design philosophy allowed her to identify backup systems that weren't even documented in the official manuals. "Your father was paranoid about single points of failure," she explained as she worked. Marcus watched in amazement as she bypassed damaged components with elegant solutions that preserved full functionality while requiring no replacement parts. It was engineering genius, disguised as childhood intuition. "There," Sophia announced, wiping her hands on a shop rag. The yacht's electric motors came to life with their characteristic whisper-quiet hum. Dashboard displays flickered back to normal operation. Navigation systems reported full functionality across all networks. Marcus felt a surge of relief so intense it nearly brought him to his knees. The IPO was saved. His company would survive. But as he looked at this remarkable child who just rescued his empire, he realized that some debts couldn't be paid with money. Her expression grew guarded. The official report said it was an accident. She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the outline of her father's dog tags. My father was the most careful engineer I ever knew. He taught me that safety isn't just a protocol, it's a way of thinking about responsibility to other people. Marcus felt the weight of a decision that would either honor David Chen's memory or destroy everything Marcus had built. But some truths were more important than corporate survival. "Your father wasn't careless," he said quietly. "He was trying to expose safety violations that could have killed people." The words hung in the salt air as Sophia processed their implications. Around them, the rescued yacht hummed with the quiet efficiency that David Chen had envisioned while his daughter absorbed the truth about his death. She asked simply. Marcus looked toward the San Francisco skyline, where Sterling Dynamics headquarters rose like a gleaming monument to innovation and progress. But he knew now that some of that success had been built on a foundation of corruption and murder. "That's what we're going to find out," he promised. As the Meridian's edge headed back toward shore, Marcus Sterling realized that saving his company was just the beginning. David Chen's daughter had not only fixed his yacht, she'd given him the chance to fix something much more important: the truth about a brilliant engineer's death and the conspiracy that had tried to bury it along with him. Sophia Chen stood motionless for several heartbeats, her small hands still gripping the wrench as Marcus Sterling's words echoed across the marina. The weight of his accusation hung in the salt air like a gathering storm. Around them, the crew of the Meridian Dream shifted uncomfortably, their eyes moving between the billionaire CEO and the 12-year-old girl who had just exposed something he clearly wanted hidden. "You think this is about my father?" Sophia said quietly, her voice carrying across the sudden silence. Marcus stepped closer, his polished shoes clicking against the yacht's deck. "Aren't you?" "A mysterious child appears at the exact moment my company faces its biggest crisis. Claims she can fix what my engineers cannot, and just happens to have intimate knowledge of systems designed by Gregory Chen." The marina around them had grown unnaturally quiet. Even the seagulls seemed to sense the tension crackling between the man who commanded billion-dollar empires and the girl who wore her father's memory like armor. Sophia's fingers found the chain at her throat, touching the small pendant that held her father's final design notes, the ones Marcus Sterling had never seen. Sophia's voice grew stronger, carrying the edge of steel her father had possessed when fighting for his principles. "I think you're scared. Not of me, not of some 12-year-old girl." Marcus's expression darkened. "The truth about why the Meridian Dream's propulsion system really failed. The truth about the shortcuts your company took to meet your impossible deadlines." The yacht's crew exchanged glances. Several stepped back, sensing they were witnessing something far more significant than a simple mechanical dispute. Captain Rodriguez moved protectively closer to Sophia, his weathered face grim with understanding. "That's enough," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You're a child playing with forces you don't understand. My company—" "Your company killed my father," Sophia interrupted, her composure finally cracking. "He discovered the flaws in the propulsion system months before the Meridian Dream was supposed to launch. He tried to warn you, tried to make you understand that the electromagnetic interference patterns would cascade through the entire electrical grid. The accusation struck Marcus like a physical blow. His face went pale, then flushed with anger. Gregory Chen died in a car accident. Sophia's eyes blazed with righteous fury. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus Sterling, a man who had built an empire through ruthless calculation and perfect control, found himself face to face with an accusation that could destroy everything he had worked to build. Around them, the crew of the Meridian Dream began to understand they were witnessing something that went far beyond mechanical failure. "You have no proof," Marcus said finally, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Sophia smiled, an expression that was both heartbreaking and terrifying on such a young face. She reached into her toolkit and withdrew a small device that looked like a modified tablet computer. "My father was brilliant, Mr. Sterling." The device in her hands hummed to life, its screen displaying technical schematics and data logs that made Marcus take an involuntary step backward. "My father's insurance policy. Every email, every meeting, every time you ignored his warnings about the propulsion system. Every corner your company cut. Every safety protocol it violated. Every life it put at risk to save money and meet deadlines." Marcus's carefully constructed world began to crumble around him. "That's impossible. All of Gregory's work files were company property. The official files, yes. But my father was too smart to trust a company that valued profit over people's lives. He kept his own records, his own evidence." Sophia's voice grew softer, sadder. The implications crashed over Marcus like a tsunami. Everything he had built, every success he had achieved, every dollar he had earned, all of it potentially built on a foundation of lies, corruption, and possibly murder. The weight of it threatened to crush him where he stood. He asked, his voice barely audible. Sophia looked at him with eyes that seemed far too old for her 12-year-old face. "I want justice for my father. I want the truth about Sterling Dynamics business practices. I want the families of everyone who died because of your company's negligence to know what really happened." The yacht rocked gently in the marina, its billion-dollar luxury a stark contrast to the moral reckoning taking place on its deck. Marcus Sterling had faced hostile takeovers, congressional investigations, and corporate espionage. But nothing had prepared him for this moment, standing face to face with the daughter of a man whose death might have blood on his hands. "You're 12 years old," he said desperately. "No one will believe you." Sophia finished. "You're right. They probably wouldn't." As if summoned by her words, new voices echoed across the marina. Marcus turned to see a group of people approaching the yacht, men and women in business attire, carrying briefcases and official-looking documents. At their head walked a tall woman with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to being taken very seriously. "Mr. Sterling," the woman called out as she reached the yacht's gangway. "I'm Senator Patricia Williams, chair of the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation." Marcus felt the walls closing in around him. Behind the senator came FBI agents, federal prosecutors, and investigative journalists whose presence meant his carefully guarded secrets were about to become front-page news. The empire he had spent decades building was about to face the kind of scrutiny that had destroyed other powerful men who thought themselves untouchable. Sophia Chen watched it all unfold with the satisfaction of someone who had spent 2 years planning this moment. Every mechanical insight she had demonstrated, every system she had repaired, every piece of evidence she had gathered, all of it had been leading to this confrontation on the deck of the Meridian Dream. "My father always said that the truth has a way of surfacing," she said to Marcus, her voice now calm and certain. "He said that lies might work for a while, but eventually someone would care enough about justice to make sure the truth came out." As federal agents began boarding the yacht and Senator Williams started reading an official document that would change Marcus Sterling's life forever, Sophia picked up her toolkit and began walking toward the gangway. Her work here was done. The truth her father had died protecting was finally free, and the man responsible for his death was about to face the consequences of choosing profit over human lives. The girl who had fixed a yacht to save a company had instead exposed the corruption that would destroy it. And in doing so, she had honored her father's memory in the most powerful way possible, by ensuring that his death had not been in vain. The morning sun climbed higher over the marina, casting long shadows across the deck of the Meridian Dream, as the most powerful man in the maritime industry learned that sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest truth.